These are cheap clone fragrances from, you guessed it, Temu. And Temu sells almost anything you can think of, from iPads and iPhones to these cheap clone fragrances. And the real question is, are these fake fragrances even close to the original? But more importantly, are they worth your hard-earned money? So let's find out. First up, we have LeBlanc, and based on the name and presentation of this fragrance, it reminds me of Lacoste Blanc, and if it's anything like the original, this one should be woody, it should be bright, and it also should be a bit aromatic. I paid $8.49 for this fragrance, and it looks very similar to that Lacoste Blanc. And instead of the alligator, it has a seahorse. Something smells fishy or oceany. Let's spray to see what it's all about. Oh, that legendary Temu back bin. Okay, it's decent, it's decent. Listen, for $8.49, this thing isn't horrible. And I was expecting something to be, well, a little outrageous. They are stepping it up. However, don't get me confused. This is not a replacement to Lacoste Blanc or any fragrance for that matter, at least not yet. Now, as the name would suggest, LeBlanc is a fragrance that's going to be good for spring and or summer, but in micro doses. This fragrance isn't going to last long at all, and it does sit close to the skin, but on that initial spray after the alcohol feeling goes away, you get something that's bright, fresh, and it is very pleasant. So far, I can get jiggy with this. The next fragrance is Wilderness Homme, and this one reminded me of Burberry Brit online because the presentation is very Burberry-esque. Now online, this fragrance was described as black wood, no diddy. But it also reminded me of Burberry London, and I'm only gonna know which one this truly smells like once I dive into the official presentation. You know what I mean. Now, one thing I will say about these Temu bottles is after they arrive, they always look so beat up and the packaging is just like old. Pop the box. Now, Homme Wilderness does look a bit different than I originally expected online because it's a black bottle with these wonky gray lines, but I originally thought it was a black bottle with transparent stripes. Boy, was I wrong. Now, because this fragrance was only $7.11, I'm gonna believe this bottle wasn't hand painted, but if it was, they did a terrible job, but more than likely, the machine they sent this through needs an alignment. The lines are all over the place, but hopefully the fragrance smells better. Here I go, putting myself at risk for the gang. This fragrance does not smell bad. My initial thoughts of this fragrance is that lemon isn't very prevalent, nor is the ginger. I get more of that base of the woods here, but there's also something like an amber within this one too that gives it this richness to the composition. Well, as rich as you can get for $7.11. In smelling this fragrance, I'm gonna say that it's not Burberry Brit, but more so Burberry London, because I do get this effervescent Christmas tree vibe in the backbone. In fact, if this fragrance was a bit more powerful, I would say this one could fight above its weight class. Now, despite all of the good things I said about this fragrance, I would not trade in my Burberry London for this fragrance because it's extremely light. In fact, it's already beginning to go away, and if you wanted to get anything out of this fragrance, you might have to spray almost the entire bottle. But if you were in a gym or needed something to wear to the gym, this could potentially work. Next up, we have Arable The One. Personally, I believe this fragrance name would have been better if it was called the Honorable One. But no, they missed an opportunity to have an epic name. But based on the name itself, I would imagine that this fragrance is said to mimic Dolce & Gabbana's The One. That is a legendary fragrance, so let's see if this has a legendary scent profile. Arable The One is the most expensive fragrance on our list today, and the presentation was by far better than the others, at least so far. This fragrance here is $18.49, so it's almost 3 times as much as the previous fragrance. So is it going to be 3 times better? Now, one thing that does set this fragrance apart from the others is that at $18.49, it does come with a backstory. This is the passionate collision between the pungent aroma of saffron and the aroma of cinnamon. I'm not sure I would like to describe a fragrance that I like as pungent, but that's neither here nor there. It goes on to say it brings a rich and intense aroma accompanied by the romantic roses and the strong patchouli. It is captivating. Hopefully it will be. And it's spicy vanilla accompanied by a warm wood exudes infinite charm. I'll be the judge of that. You would thought it said and exudes warm charm, but it did not. It's driving me crazy. Not bad, not bad. This is definitely more intoxicating than the previous 2 fragrances. At this $18.49 price point, I would expect that the rose or whatever molecule they're using to make this rose would be nearly undetectable, but it is there, it's alive and well. I get a lot of that spice here in the top, and immediately behind that, I am met with some of that rose, and it's a nice rose and not pungent as they describe. It's fairly pleasant. Out of all the Temu fragrances I've smelled, this one is by far the best. It is listed as long-lasting and refreshing. I wouldn't say that there's much refreshing about this fragrance unless you're saying it's refreshing not to get a fragrance that sucks from Temu. As it begins to die down, a little bit of those woods come through, a little bit more creamy nature that comes through in this one as well. I'm not mad at it. Wonder how this fragrance would perform in the long haul. And our next fragrance from Jean Miss happens to be a fragrance that I believe is going to look familiar to a lot of you out there. So let's crack it open. Now, what I do find interesting about this Jean Miss bottle is that the insignia next to Jean Miss name almost looks like a knockoff Mont Blanc. But the fragrance definitely does not look like a Mont Blanc fragrance. Ooh. There you have it. In all its glory, we have Jean Miss for him, and this one looks like Rassasi Hawass. On the Temu website, this one is described as a woody fragrance for men, and it has almost that same color that you would expect from Rassasi Hawass and or Paco Rabanne Invictus. Let's see what it smells like. Now, this fragrance did cost me a whopping $8.99, so if you got some money, don't spend it all in one place. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Temu, have you been watching my videos? Because you guys have been stepping it up. Now, I still can't say that smelling these fragrances is particularly safe, but they do smell a lot better than our first go around. And taking a deep whiff here, we got some citrus components here. There's a bit of woods here, and then there's almost that same bubblegum-esque vibe that you would get from a Hawass or you would get from a Paco Rabanne Invictus, but not quite the same. It's not as realistic, not that those are realistic at all, but they're not as sweet and it's not as close to those, but it does have a very, very similar vibe. Now, for $8.99, you might say, hey, it's worth a chance, but the others aren't terribly expensive, so you can probably just stick to the originals and go from there. Unfortunately, if you were considering picking this fragrance up, you can't. I just went on their website and this fragrance is no longer available, at least not in the presentation that it is. And we've seen that happen when they are super close to what the original fragrance should look and or feel like. We also saw that with the Paco Rabanne Invictus bottle because it said Invictus and it was actually shaped like the Invictus bottle. Maybe I'll have to do a side-by-side comparison and determine which one of those are the best. And these are the fake clone fragrances I purchased from Temu. And all of these fragrances could fit in someone's fragrance wardrobe, but I don't think I'd recommend it. However, if you were going to take a stab, the one I would tell you to try is Arable The One. This one has the best performance that I've smelled so far, best longevity, I'm going to assume, but the fragrance does smell the best, although it is not made for the spring and or summer. This is probably more of that fall and winter fragrance. But if you're looking for a little cuddle buddy activity, the one could be an honorable addition to your collection. I was able to buy all of these fragrances for less than 75 bucks. So if you enjoyed this video, click here to see what happened when I purchased $400 worth of fake fragrance from Temu.